Today we are doing thoughts and theories on WandaVision episode 5. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing thoughts and theories on WandaVision episode 5. So my past 2 episodes I have done 2 episodes per video, but the first 4 episodes were slower, I guess. There was less to talk about, and I just felt like episode 5 deserved its own video because literally so much happened. So let's get into it. Okay, so I can definitely tell that this episode is from the 80s because just the whole vibe of it, I guess, screams 80s sitcom. So the sitcom that I watched the most in the 80s, not that I was alive in the 80s, but that sitcom from the 80s is Full House. So it's the classic sitcom. They just had a baby and the baby won't stop crying, except they have 2 babies and their babies will not stop crying. Wanda tries to use her powers to get the 2 babies to go to sleep, and it doesn't work. So I thought that was interesting and maybe a hint to what kind of superpowers or whatever these babies might have. Okay, so then Agnes comes over, who we've seen in every episode, I believe, and she comes over to try to help the baby stop crying. So she wants to hold them, and Vision freaks out like a dad. He's just like, germs, I don't want you to touch my kids, stuff like that. So again, kind of a classic sitcom thing. Okay, so Vision tells her, maybe we should just not have you touch the babies. And Agnes doesn't know what to do. She's just standing there confused, and she turns to Wanda and she's like, do you want me to try that again? Meaning do you want me to start from the top of the scene type thing? And Wanda just kind of has a blank stare, and she's looking at Vision and Vision's looking at her, and obviously there's a lot of confusion. Yes, that's how you say the word. There's a lot of confusion going on. So Wanda tries to play it off like it's nothing because obviously she kind of knows that there's something going on, and Vision pulls Wanda aside and he's like, wasn't that weird? Is there something going on? And Wanda's just like, oh no, it's fine. Everything's fine. Agnes is fine. So Agnes just hops right back into her character, starts acting like the normal sitcom character. Everything seems to be back to normal, and then all of a sudden the 2 kids age up to 5 years old. So they're not babies anymore. And Agnes doesn't even have any weird reaction to Wanda and Vision's babies just aging up. Okay, so then it is the opening song for this episode, and oh my god, it was so good. So like I said, I watched a lot of Full House, and while there were references to other sitcoms in this opening, I spotted those Full House cameos so fast, and it made me so happy. It was identical, so cool. Okay, so then we go to outside of Westview, back to Monica's story and Sword, and they're trying to examine Monica, and they do x-rays and stuff and blood work, and nothing shows up on the x-rays, and they have to redo her blood work. So obviously they know that something is up because she came out of Westview and none of the medical technology or anything is picking up anything in her body. So immediately, I don't know if it's the FBI or Sword, I'm not exactly sure, but people are starting to think that Wanda is the big villain, and it makes sense, but Monica is trying to advocate for Wanda because she thinks that while Wanda's not innocent, she thinks she's not in control of everything, and she might even be being controlled. So she doesn't think that Wanda is the bad guy in this case scenario, and is trying to advocate for her. So they're looking back at the other things that Wanda has done in her other movies where she didn't really know how to use her powers for good. She would like accidentally kill innocent civilians and stuff, and they're just using all of that to back up their claim that Wanda is not a good person. So then it goes back to the sitcom, and it is the two little boys, Billy and Tommy, and they find a dog and they're washing it in the sink and they're trying to hide it from Wanda. And Wanda eventually just lets them keep the dog. And Agnes comes over and gives them a doghouse. And oh yeah, here's the thing. Wanda originally didn't let them keep the dog because Vision said that they were not old enough, that they needed to be 10 years old. So while Agnes was there, the kids aged up to 10 years old because they wanted the dog. So they definitely have some sort of powers. So back at Sword, Monica and Darcy and is it Jimmy Woo? They are trying to figure out like what's happening in Westview, obviously, and they start talking about how when things go into Westview, they change to fit the reality in Westview. So, for example, Monica's clothes changed when she went into Westview, and when she came out, she was still in those changed clothes. So, what they figured out is Wanda is altering reality. So, the clothes that Monica went in with were bulletproof, and the clothes that she came out with were still bulletproof. They were made of the same materials, they just looked different. They were made into 80s clothes, or I guess 70s clothes, because she was there in the 70s. And so she's not like conjuring up new particles and elements and stuff. She's just simply changing the reality of things that are already there. So, because of this, they get the idea, what if they send something in that is supposed to be in that time period? It shouldn't be altered because it is from that time period. So then we go back to the sitcom, and Vision goes to work, and they're working on computers because computers became like a big thing in the 80s, and everyone at work is trying to figure out how to use their computers, and Vision's obviously an expert because he's basically a computer. So his coworker decides to surf the internet and he gets an email, which he doesn't really know anything about, but obviously Vision does. So they open it up and it's Darcy's findings on what is happening in Westview and what Wanda is doing. And Vision immediately becomes concerned and he does something to his coworker Norm that makes Norm go back to who he really is. And he's like, I don't know what's happening, like she's in my mind, like I'm not doing anything like from me, like how do I explain this, like she is in his mind, what he is doing is not his choices. So going back to Sword outside of Westview, they decide to send in a drone that is from the 80s. So it's 80s technology, so it shouldn't get altered or anything. And it works. They're able to see into Westview from outside of it. And Wanda catches on. So they go outside, it's Wanda and then her two sons and their dog. And Wanda sees the drone, and apparently the people that were advocating against Wanda put missiles on the drone, I believe, and we're gonna try to shoot at her, but Monica just really wanted to use the drone to talk to Wanda. So the drone goes offline, and all of a sudden Wanda comes from like through the force field of Westview and comes to talk to everyone, and her like Sokovian accent is back, and it's like the Wanda that you see in the Avengers movies, and she's like, this is my reality, I don't want you bothering me, like this is my home, please leave me alone. So Wanda basically tells them to leave her alone, and she goes back into Westview, and it cuts to a commercial, And something that I haven't stressed in my past few videos is the commercials are important. There's a ton of references in them, like Stark Industries products, Hydra. This one has Lagos, and this one is about a paper towel commercial, which is very similar to the ones we still see today. So the slogan for this commercial is "For when you make a mess and you didn't mean to." And while this might just seem like a normal paper towel commercial, it relates to Wanda and how she made a mess of things when she was just trying to use her powers to save the world, and she was just killing innocent civilians. And she didn't try to, she made a mess of things she didn't try to, but it just happened. She was learning how to save the world with her powers. So then we go back to Westview, back to the sitcom. So the boys and Wanda are looking for their dog that ran away, and they find Agnes, who found their dog. It had eaten her plants and poisoned him, and he didn't make it. And Wanda was trying to teach her boys a lesson that they can't just age up to help their pain to make themselves feel better because of their dog. Like, they need to remain 10 years old and just be sad and handle their emotions. They can't just escape it by aging up. And I think that was a big thing because Wanda might be escaping her pain and grief of Vision dying and coming up with this big reality to help her feel happier after Vision died. Oh my god, I forgot such a big part. So, when they were trying to say that Wanda was the bad guy earlier on in the episode, like I said, they were using a bunch of like old footage from the other Avengers movies. And one thing I forgot to include is that there was footage of her about a week ago where she went to the facility where Vision's corpse was and she stole it. So the Vision that is in this might be the actual body of Vision, and she might have like brought it back to life. I don't know, but that's an important part that I missed out on. So they're back at the house, and Vision approaches Wanda about how he knows that he is controlling these people. And Wanda keeps using her powers in front of people, and they had agreed that they weren't going to do that. They wanted to conceal their powers. So they have this big disagreement, and they don't really normally have disagreements. So it was this big thing. And Vision starts saying, like, I know what you're doing to these people, and like, I don't remember my life before Westview. And Wanda's trying to protect him because she knows his life outside of Westview. And then the doorbell rings, and she goes and opens the door. So let me preface this. I read a lot of the like WandaVision blogs and stuff, so I knew that a big like cameo was coming, something comparable to like Luke Skywalker being in The Mandalorian. It was going to be something really, really big. So I don't have a lot of knowledge about this, which is why the guest star in this episode didn't shock me as much as it should have. But after watching the episode, I did a lot of reading on it, and it's actually very crazy. So someone comes to the door, and Wanda recognizes him as her brother, Pedro. I say Pedro, it's technically like Pietro, I think, but I don't know. Pietro, Pedro, whatever. You get the gist. And this isn't the same Pedro from Age of Ultron. And Darcy is outside of Westview watching the sitcom, and she says something like, they recast him, they recast Pedro. So at this point, I was really confused and I didn't understand why. So basically, I have never really seen the X-Men movies, but those comics are the same comics as like the Marvel Avengers comics. They're all supposed to be in the same world, but a different company had the rights to X-Men than the people that had the rights to Marvel and the Avengers. So there was some problems with Wanda and Pedro because Wanda's technically supposed to be a mutant like the X-Men, but she is not portrayed as that in the Avengers movies because she was owned by different people. So her brother Pedro is Quicksilver, that's his like comic name. And he was in Age of Ultron, but he was also killed off in that movie. So he was only in one of the Marvel movies. And apparently in X-Men, there's also a Quicksilver, Pedro, and it's played by a different actor because it's a completely different company, like owned completely separately. And eventually Disney bought both of them, so now they're owned by the same company. So people were wondering if these two comics were eventually going to come together. So what happened is the actor that plays Quicksilver or Pedro in the X-Men movies showed up in WandaVision, and Wanda recognized him as her brother when her brother in Age of Ultron actually died. So, I don't exactly know what's going on, but people think this is going to be where the two worlds are going to cross over and become one world, which is a very huge thing because they're both very big franchises, and for them to come together for phase 4 of Marvel would be so crazy, and I would definitely have to watch the X-Men movies and all those things. So this was super, super important, even though I, along with many people, might not have realized it, but some really big things are coming, and each episode gives us more and more details and insight about what's gonna happen. And there's only 4 more episodes left, and I am so excited to see how it ends, but I'll be so sad when it ends because having this episode to look forward to every weekend is so amazing, and I love talking to you guys about it. So let me know if you like these videos. Let me know if you would like me to do things a little differently or whatever. But I'm so excited. Make sure to watch the show on Disney Plus, and I will be back next week with a recap of thoughts and theories on episode 6.